All right. So, many supply chains are perfectly suited to the needs that the business had 20 years ago. Now, as someone coming from logistics and supply chain, one of the greatest challenges that we have, and one of the most common questions is, where's my stuff? Right? Because after all, if something is not in the right location at the right time, well, then your operations stop. Right? So, the big question that we have here today is, how do we make sure that we have reliable data to make sure that the actions that we take, to make sure that we can take the correct actions to stop our operations stopping? Right, so my name is Max Odehammar. I'm from supply chain management within Volvo Group, and I'm here representing the business perspective for tracking implementation.
And I'm Julien Bertolini. I'm in the IoT domain for more than a decade, and my role at Volvo is to define the strategy for the IoT and the edge computing technologies. So, Max, give us some context about Volvo.
Okay, so Volvo Group, you might have heard the name. What we do in the world is that we provide transport solutions. This means mostly trucks, also buses, construction equipment, and power solutions for maritime and industrial use. There's more to it, of course, than Volvo as a brand. You might have heard of Mack trucks or Renault trucks, or any of these other brands that we have behind us. Key here is that we are a global operations. We exist everywhere in the world. We have production sites everywhere. And of course, the supply chain extends far above that.
Great, but what is the topic today?
The topic today is tracking. And you might have heard of track and trace. Now, some people define track and trace as basically you have an object and you follow it either backwards or you follow it forwards. When we talk about tracking within Volvo Group, we say that tracking is about the position of an object and how you use the data of a position to generate business value, whereas traceability is about the attributes of an object. Basically, this means that where is the thing and what is the thing? And within Volvo Group, of course, we have many use cases for tracking. Imagine this, right? So we produce a truck. Once it's out, we place the truck on a yard. Okay, but where in the yard? Because that matters, right? If you don't know where the truck is, someone will have to go and look for it. That could take 2 hours, right? And by that time, okay, we've missed shipping of the truck. We have staff running around chasing something when we should be doing something else, right? But even before that, of course, we need to build the trucks. What do we need for that? Parts. When we build a truck, every truck is unique. That means that we have unique items that needs to go into each individual truck, right, in the correct sequence. If we're not there, well, the production line stops. Before that, of course, we need to make sure that, is it on site? So we need to know, okay, we have a transport coming in or transport going out. Is it on time? Once it is on site, is it in the correct building? Right? Is it close to production, or is it in some corner somewhere? And again, we have to go look for it. When it is in production, we need to make sure that, okay, well, is the correct truck at the right location? Do we have the tools in the correct location? Speaking of tools, there are tons of assets throughout this whole supply chain, right? Tools, forklifts, kit carts. There's also something called packaging, right? And I'm not talking about like the plastic wrappers that you have around your candy here. I'm talking about industrial packaging, right? So if you're an operation like Volvo Group, in fact, we actually have our own packaging that we ask our suppliers to use to fit our production, right? It's fairly a large operation here. So we have just a short introduction video so that you can see, right? So we start with the packaging at the terminal. So the suppliers will actually order packaging from us, which means that in this case, the relationship is reversed. We become our supplier's supplier. So the packaging pool is global. We have around 30 million pieces in our packaging pool. And it goes, of course, from the supplier filled with parts to the Volvo sites. Then the Volvo sites return it to a packaging terminal often, and then we order it out. So it's a continuous loop of packaging, going around and around. And of course, we have to do maintenance on it. We have to clean it. It is truly an asset. Okay,
so Max, you are talking about 30 million packaging, but what are the main issues? What are the pain points that you are facing?
Well, 30 million pieces, but I don't know where everything is. And why is it important to know where everything is? Well, if we don't have packaging, nothing is being moved. Like, we can't put an engine just on the ground. It's going to get damaged. We can't optimize our trailers, right? So, no packaging, nothing's being moved, and that means no production. And we don't have an unlimited amount of packaging. If we run out of packaging, then, well, you can forget about running to the store. That's not happening. Sometimes the lead times is half a year. And, well, packaging is not always used the way it's supposed to be. Some people are very, very creative in using packaging, not for transportation. And sadly, the way we actually keep track of things, or try to keep track of things today, it's basically so that we are using manual transactions. So someone will type into a system, today I've moved 5 pieces, maybe they moved 6, right? Maybe it's the wrong day. And these errors, they stack up. Again, it's a loop, right? So you get one small error, well, forget about good stock numbers. So the business case for packaging is, if we can actually know how much packaging we actually have, we can know the actual lead times, and we can know when packaging leaves the correct flow, then we can have the right amount of packaging at the right time and in the right location, which means we can secure production, and that's the main point. But the question here is, how do we implement the tracking solution, Julien? What are the options?
Yeah, so thanks a lot for this great introduction. So now that you have understood the issue, so where do we start this tracking journey? Because it's a journey. And as an IoT expert, I can see that more than 70% of IoT initiatives are failing. And one of the big reasons for that is the lack of collaboration between IT and OT. So 2 years ago, we started a strong collaboration with Max to be sure that we are aligned between IT and OT. So Max knows deeply the pain points at Volvo Logistics, and I bring the know-how on the technology. So at the beginning of our journey, our tracking journey 2 years ago, I started to explain to Max some little stuff about the tracking technologies. And I would like to show you some examples so you can have the big pictures about these technologies. It's something quite complicated. Why? Because the first thing that you have to keep in mind with tracking technologies is that the goal is to get a position and then to send the position to a server. So it's 2 different things. The first thing is you need a location technology. So different radio technologies that are available on the market. But you have to combine that with a communication technologies. And usually people are really confused about that because it could be the same radio technology that is doing both or not. So really here, my message here is to say that for each use case, you have to find the right combination between the location technology and the communication technology. Okay, so now you have selected the best technology for your use case. There's another layer that you can put on top of it, because there are different locating methods. So locating method is the way that you are treating your data to calculate your position, to give an X and Y. So the simplest is the zoning. So with the zoning, you just know if an asset is entering or exiting a zone. But you can use some other techniques, like for example, TDOA, time difference of arrival. With this method, you can get an X and Y. But you can also use RSSI, so with the signal strength, to also get an X and Y. And I can mention the last one, angle of arrival, to have a really accurate X and Y. So what I'm saying here is that you have several layers, and it could be really complicated if you're not in the domain. I played a little bit with this table. I put 6 technologies, and I compare the accuracy, the zone, energy consumption, is it real time or not, the cost of the infrastructure and the cost of the tags, the strengths and weaknesses. And we can see that we can take one technology and compare it to another, and we can see strengths and weaknesses for each technology. So the question from Max was, but what are the relevant criteria? So I try here to put the most relevant criteria for each use case, to find the best technology, and to be able to estimate the cost of the solution. So it was a great journey to explain all that. And I know that I've given you a lot of info, but if I need to summarize what I've said for the tracking technology, I will say 3 points. The first thing, it's a fast evolving field with lots of technologies. So you have to keep up to date. The second thing is the one size does not fit all. As I said, there are strengths and weaknesses for each technology. And the last point is that the market, it's a growing market. It's a huge market. So if you can see these 3 points, you can understand that it's not a fully mature domain. However, we have a lot of production that works at an industrial grade. So it's really worth it to work with this technology. So now that you have a good understanding of the technology, let's go back to the beginning of the journey, and let's see what we have done with a little POC. Max, can you describe what we have done?
Indeed. So what we ended up doing was our first proof of concept. And as you can see here, this is our flow. So we have a supplier, we have 2 Volvo sites, and we have a packaging terminal. So the supplier sends material to the sites, the material is used, the plant will then return the packaging to the packaging terminal. If we need to do maintenance, then we can do that on a 5th site here. But then the supplier will then place an order, and then we will send it out. Very simple flow. And we have, in this case, 85 boxes. Now, what Julien just said about the tracking technologies, it's fairly complex. It's a jungle, right? But Julien, I've heard about RFID. Everyone's talking about RFID. Could this be used here?
So yeah, the first idea from Max was RFID, and it's a great solution. I mean, it's proven that it's working for industrial assets, for sure. However, if you can take a look a little deeper on the use case, you can see that for RFID, you have to install big RFID gates, so it costs a lot of money. You have to plug it to the electricity and also to a network. So, for example, installing such a gate to a supplier may be a big challenge, especially because you have to deal with the cybersecurity of each supplier plant. So that's why RFID was not the best candidate for this use case.
So basically, even though the tags are quite cheap, actually setting everything up, maybe not the easiest for a proof of concept. But hey, I heard about something else. GPS, right? Everyone's using GPS in their cell phones. Can't we just put some GPS on these boxes?
Yeah, so GPS is, of course, a great technology. You can combine that with cellular technology to communicate the position. You don't have to put any infrastructure, because the satellites are already here. The cellular antennas are always also here. So that's really cheap for the infrastructure. However, one big issue that we can have is the cost of such a tracker. Because for 85 boxes, it would not be a big issue. But if we want to scale, I don't think that a GPS tracker can fit the business model.
No, that's true. I mean, ideally, we would want to learn something here, right? And bring this on to how can we actually scale after this. Okay. I hear there are no easy options from these two, at least, but do we have any alternatives?
Yes, so the first alternative that I can think of is BLE. Because if you put BLE tags on each boxes, the cost is quite low. And you can install BLE gateways because these gateways can be autonomous. So they can run on battery, communicating with the cellular network. So it's super easy to install. And you don't have to deal with the cybersecurity and having the issue with the supplier. So it could be a great solution to do automatic inventory at some point of interest.
Yes, and that's what we ended up doing. In fact, it was quite easy once we talked to the supplier, and we said that, okay, well, we don't actually need to connect to your networks, and you can just put this thing up with zip ties, the gateway. It was a fairly easy discussion.
But you were more challenging than that.
Yeah. So the question here, of course, as well, is that this will not give us in-transit tracking, will it, if we want to have that?
Yeah, absolutely. So to solve this issue, so to have this feature to be able to follow the packaging during the transportation, during the transit, we have added some mobile gateways to the trailer. So it means with the mobile gateway, it scans all the BLE tags around and send a GPS position through cellular technology. So we put just few mobile gateways combined with these BLE tags to solve the entire use case.
Yeah, said and done. But what did we get out from this POC? Well, first of all, I said we have 85 boxes. And usually we would expect these to rotate through the flow in about a month. Unfortunately, it took over a year. So when you actually want to deploy this, maybe it's going to take longer than you expect. Why? Well, some boxes, of course, I mean, we're going to stand around in some warehouse. Some will have disappeared. Some are sent to the other side of the world. But the actual result, when we look at the data, it's quite promising. I mean, you can see here the ERP data, which is what we're using currently. Well, the ERP data only picks up about 41 if you average it out. The actual tracking data, well, it picks up whatever we've tagged. Right?
But Max, here we can see some negative numbers. Could you explain what does it mean for a stock?
Yeah, so negative numbers, it's kind of a fun thing, right? Of course, negative packaging doesn't exist in reality. So what's actually happening here is that one of these sites, or several of these sites, they're registering something out, but they're not getting the corresponding transactions in, right? So someone has either forgotten to do transactions, or they're doing it in the wrong time, or we have master data that is incorrectly set up. But I mean, these errors, again, they will just kind of spin out, and eventually we have this, and this is not data I can use.
I mean, that's super important for me because many times I have managers coming to me and saying, okay, to improve Volvo Logistics, we can put some AI model. But I mean, with this crappy data, you can do whatever you want with AI. I mean, crap in, crap out. You will not get anything. So the first thing to do is to have the right data, to have quality data. And that's exactly what we can see here with this little POC.
All right. But what can we get out from as far as business value? Well, first is express transports. I mean, if you work in logistics, you might have had this on your schedule sometime. It's a transport that would probably have happened anyways, but now you have to pay 3 times as much because everything is a rush, right? And this actually happened. So the supplier contacted us and said, well, if you don't give us packaging within the next day or so, we're going to stop production. And then we're not going to build trucks, right? But what happened is I went into the tracking system, and I saw that, well, just 1 hour before, we've actually delivered. So the only thing I had to do was, hey, check your loading dock. No express transport needed. The other thing is, when you're using something like GPS data, then of course you can follow up and see, okay, well, if we're losing somewhere, where is it actually going in the world? Because it's probably not going to be in the site when you have infrastructure. But you can also see, of course, who sent it in the first place, but you can work on your processes. One major thing is that, of course, when you're using accurate data, you're not getting, for instance, okay, you book a transport, 15 units of packaging. Driver shows up. There's only 10 actually there, so you're going to pay for 15 units to be shipped, but only 10 will go, right? That's no longer happening. We're actually getting 100% planning precision now. And kind of back to the GPS data, what we found is that it's useful, it's interesting, but it's not a must-have. So it's not like we actually need to have GPS on everything. Right? We can throw a couple of in because it gains us something, but maybe not on everything. So the question going forward, of course, is how do we move from this POC and scale it up? Not only to packaging, not only to similar use cases, but to all our tracking needs. If we take a look at Volvo as an organization, we can find that it's fairly large, and as many large organizations, we have silos. So people aren't talking to each other like we would want, of course, and we have lots of use cases. Okay, lots of use cases. So, for instance, we have a packaging department. Where's my packaging, right? Production department, we're asking, where are my parts? Transport department, where are the transports? It's 3 different use cases, right? But if you think about it, you're not moving parts without packaging. You're not moving anything without transports. So there's a fair degree of overlap here, isn't it? And how can we use this? Well, imagine this. You put hardware on the packaging, and then you link the parts with the packaging. Right? Suddenly you can use the hardware on the packaging, which you can maybe upscale and have a, maybe a bit of a fancier hardware. So maybe you can use things like RTLS, which is basically indoor tracking, high precision tracking, where you might have not used that for just the parts if you have a one-way flow. Next, okay. If you can link the packaging to transports when it's loaded, okay, well, then you can use GPS data from the actual trucks, right? So the trucks will have a telematics unit. Most likely there's going to be a GPS. It's going to send that positional data into a cloud, and then you can buy that information. So you don't actually need to have GPS on the actual assets themselves. Then it's just a question of you unlink the packaging from the transports when it's arrived, and you unlink the material from the packaging when it is at the usage site. Okay, so how can you do this yourselves, right? The first part, when you're considering your use cases, make a thorough stakeholder analysis. Consider everyone who's actually connected to your use case, and then start talking to them. Secondly is share your knowledge about your use case and about the solutions that are out there in the market. What we did in Volvo is that we have basically just an informal network when we discuss these things, and then we can connect with each other. So, and if you do these things, well, Julien mentioned that there's no one-size-fits-all solution, but one size might fit more than you expect. So, there's one more point here. So far, we've only really discussed how do you get the data, right? Data acquisition, the actual positions, but just the positions in and of themselves, they're not going to give you business value. Right? So Julien, how do we get business value from all this data?
Thanks. So as you can see, this smart guy was able to build a vision for all the tracking initiatives at Volvo. And it is great. And how we can get from the data to real business value, we have decided to build our platform, so the Volvo tracking platform. So what are the high-level requirements for this platform? The first thing, as you can understand, it should be scalable, because we have a lot of use cases and because some use cases are really huge. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we want this platform to be hardware and vendor agnostic. So as I have explained before, It is a fast-evolving market. It's a jungle, a lot of vendors, a lot of technologies. So we want our platform to be future-proof. And then we have IT people that need to do device management, device monitoring. They should update the hardware. They should do the provisioning of new trackers, revoking, manage the certificates, all that stuff. And of course, we are doing the platform for end users. So the business would like to be autonomous. They would like to be autonomous to build dashboard, to build alerts, to do zone management so they can define their zone, for the geofencing, and all that. So I will show you how we can do that. But before, I would like to come back to this hardware and vendor agnostic. So the best way to do that is to use what we call a tracking hub. So basically, that's a middleware. So that's a piece of software that is between the hardware and the application. And this middleware is based on open standards. What does it mean? It means that we can plug any hardware from a compliant vendors, and we will always get the same message. So it does not depend on the vendor or on the technology. And by using this kind of hub, we can really scale to all use cases that we need to implement. So let's take a look at the architecture of this platform. So as you have understood, we have millions of trackers that are installed on assets. They are communicating using different technologies. They are communicating to some gateways or readers, depending on the technologies. And all these messages are coming to our tracking hub. So this tracking hub will send standard message to our tracking platform. So we have built the tracking platform on Azure. And of course, this tracking platform will feed some Volvo legacy application, and end users can access it using dashboards and several UI. Now, if we can go a little deeper into the tracking platform, you can see that we have common bricks that are used all over use cases, and we have isolated use cases. So we have selected this kind of architecture to be able to be agile, fast, and to do a release without interaction between the use cases. So that's one thing. But on the other hand, we're also building libraries that can be reused in all use cases. So we are mutualizing the development efforts. So that's how we solve this big challenge. So I hope that you have enjoyed this little presentation. It was a big journey, this tracking journey, 2 years of journey, and let's see the lesson learned. The first thing, as you have probably understood, is the one size does not fit all. So with the tracking technology, you have to really dig into your use case to find the right technology that really fits your use case. Do you want to take the second one?
Indeed. The next one is, of course, that, well, whichever size you pick, you can probably fit more than you expect. But the only way to do this is that you have to break the silos, right? So talk to each other within the organization, combine your use cases.
And the last one, it's my favorite mantra. It's think big, start small. So it's so important to first have the vision of what you want to do, but then you have to start with a small concrete use case and learn by doing. That's exactly what we are doing, and I encourage you to do the same. So I hope you have enjoyed this presentation. Now it's time to say thank you.
Thank you.
And we have some time for a Q&A session, if there are some questions. Yes? Oh, no. Oh, there's a microphone over there.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the insights. How many devices are you deploying right now? Can you share this above these 85 boxes?
I'm not sure we can. More than 85, less than 30 million at the moment.
Another question?
Yes. Have you looked at great presentation on Uscape, by the way. Have you looked at the IoT platform vendor to get all those devices up to your cloud? Or are you building it yourself, or how do you solve that?
So yeah, so that's a mix. So yeah, we have taken a look at what is existing. One thing is that we have to really integrate this platform in our process and in our way of working. So it could not be just a platform from a vendor. However, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So it's like a mix between a platform vendor and some custom development that we are doing.
Hey, thank you for the great presentation. I'm here.
Oh, okay.
My name is Julien Bertolini. I'm Group CIO at the construction rental equipment company. We do the same as you do. So we use our GPSs on our larger machines to track the BLEs. We use Hilti tags for that. I can disclose the number. We are not a public company, so we have around 65,000 in production today. But the problem is that the tag itself, we are presuming it's going to last for 3 to 4 years, and those assets are going to live up to 10 years. I imagine your wooden boxes are going to outlive the BLE's battery life cycle. So do you have some mitigation strategy in that to ensure that you don't have dead freight that you can't track because of the battery life running out?
Yeah, so that's a really great point, and our target is 7 years, and even if we know that some packaging will live longer than that, but we have fixed this number of years, and we'll see in the future if we were right or wrong. That's always a risk.
And there's actually a bit more to that when you think about it, because even within packaging, I mean, there's different categories of assets. So, I mean, yeah, maybe we can put a GPS device on a packaging worth 5,000 euros. Maybe BLE is, I mean, we can cover quite a large range there as well, but most of the 30 million is probably not going to be BLE, because now we're talking a wooden pallet for like 20 euros. So, BLE tag, maybe not. That's probably going to be RFID. But either way, when we're talking about those types of assets that are actually going to use the BLE tag, we're going to rotate through a maintenance cycle. Of course, at that point, it might not be interesting to say, exchange the battery. I mean, at that point, we might as well buy a new device, because after 7 years, there's going to be something better.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. So one question from my side, how you ensure that the data that ends up in a cloud is reliable, and how you ensure that someone cannot inject false data into a system?
Yeah, so that's one big point, and we really rely on our cybersecurity department for that. I'm not specialist enough in this domain to be 100% sure. But yeah, we have a cybersecurity department that is doing big audits on our vendors to be sure that it's the most secure as possible, and we try to limit the number of entry points to our network also, because our cybersecurity department does not want to have like multiple entry points all over the world. So that's our strategy. Of course, it's never 100. We cannot say that there's no risk, but we try to limit that.
Hi. Thank you for the presentation. Yeah. So, quick question. So, about number of BLE scanners, how do you decide that? And second, what is the accuracy you get for location accuracy with BLE?
Yeah, so for the number of BLE trackers, I mean,
So
BLE gateways, it's the number of point of interest.
Yeah, so the question is gateways rather than tags, right?
No, so how do you decide where to put scanners? You know, like on in a plant, or the distance between two scanners?
I mean, it kind of depends on, okay, what type of gateway is it now? We talked about, say, mobile gateways. Of course, since they are battery powered, we're not going to be continuously scanning, because also, of course, we want to conserve a battery. So that's going to be, you know, one point. Or, I mean, can we plug it in so I can continuously scan? Usually, I mean, we would want to place at least one, or to cover the area where we expect that the packaging is going to be at the site. So that we have multiple scan cycles that can capture the packaging. But I mean, you can also put it in the entrance. But of course, it depends on, again, can you plug it in? How often can it scan? But also, what is the layout of the site that you're talking about? Because sometimes you can actually place gateways, you know, all across the area. If you have a yard and maybe you don't even have poles or something like that, then it can be difficult. Maybe you won't even place them on forklifts then. So I mean, there's a lot of considerations going to like where you actually want to physically place gateways.
But the most common use case is just to do automatic inventories at some point of interest. So we don't really care about the X and Y, the exact position. We just want to know how many assets do we have at this point in the site. So usually that's not a big question, but it could be for some use cases. And usually we say it for BLE that we can have an accuracy of 5 meters. That's I mean, the state of the market for the moment. We are using also some BLE for some specific use case. We are using angle of arrival. And when we are using the angle of arrival, we can have something like 1 meter of accuracy. 1 meter is quite nice. But it's for some specific use case.
Okay, one quick question from my side. What is the scanning range of the gateways you're using? What is the typical scanning range here on towards your left side? Left? Here?
Yeah, I can see.
Okay.
All right.
I mean, realistically, it's going to depend on where the asset is and where the gateway is. Because, I mean, if you have line of sight, I mean, allegedly it can be up to several hundred meters. But if you're within a factory, when you're going to have interference, right? And the question is, I mean, what kind of interference do you have? Do you have a lot of metal? Do you have something else? Generally, I mean, we would expect something like 30 meters in a factory environment.
One more question.
Yeah, I was just wondering, does the system integrate with other systems? Like, do you provide some APIs for others to integrate this into their warehouse management, or?
So the Volvo tracking platform is not a product; it's completely internal.
Thank you.
Yeah, but it provides data to our systems.
Yeah, for sure.
Our WMS, our logistic execution system, and other systems.
Because, of course, I mean, one of the ideas here is that, yes, we're going to have a tracking platform, but we also want to increase the data quality within our existing ERP systems. So in that way, yes, I mean, of course, there's an API.
Oh, just one question here as well, and great presentation, by the way. Now that you've got at least 85 devices out there, that's a lot of devices. What's your strategy around monitoring the health of these devices, and how did you find implementing a solution so that you can go in the field and perhaps change the batteries or make sure that you've got the most uptime out of your devices? Because one thing that I found personally is that it's quite difficult at times to put in the right controls so that you have the highest number of nodes operating properly, essentially. I'm just curious to know your experience.
Yeah, so for the moment we have the tools to monitor that, but we don't have built the process to really do all this operation because we are just at the beginning of the journey, so we don't have that much issue for the moment, but it will come for sure. I mean, we are used to do that on other systems. Usually, the way to do that is to try to catch the device at a point in the loop, because it's all we're all talking about logistic loops. So we know that that the trackers will come back at one point. But yes, of course, we have to build a strong process to be sure to catch the tracker and to replace the battery or do what we need to do before it end up dead in the loop, because it would be yes.
I mean, it's a fairly complex question when you think about it, because of course, depending on exactly which type of asset and the use case, we're going to use different types of technologies. So the actual answer, it will kind of depend. I mean, it's kind of weird answer, but in a way, that is true in terms of logistics. No site is like the other site, right? There's also always going to be different processes.
Who determines where to put the tags? Because you have huge amount of parts, and average worker in your factory shouldn't care where the worker put the parts. They just care not to break it.
Yeah.
Do you have a whole section about it? Have you considered it?
Yeah, so it's going to depend, of course, when we're talking about packaging, at least. Then we have multiple departments working with a different part of the packaging process. One of those departments is what we call packaging design. And then they will, of course, handle the requirements as far as dimensions, does it work in which process in the factory. And ultimately, they will also be then responsible for selecting an appropriate location on the packaging. Because, of course, I mean, it needs to be able to send a signal out that to be detected from the gateways, if it's that type, or if it's GPS, it needs to get a signal, things like this, right? But it also needs to be in a location that doesn't interfere with either the parts going into the packaging, and it shouldn't be exposed to, for instance, being ran through by a forklift.
So yeah, it was a big challenge. Like, for example, for the engine rack, where to put the tag, because you would put a big engine on top of it. You need to get some signal, but you don't want the tracker to be scratched by a forklift or something. So yeah, so that's big questions and we have worked on it.
Yeah, and I mean, you can kind of imagine some of the packaging. You can have like a big metal rack, and it could be like basically a metal tube. And of course, the safest place for the tag is inside the tube, but then it's not going to send a signal.
Yeah.
Is that okay now? All right. Just a quick question about the BLE tags. So do you use spatial asset management system to manage the tags? And then let's say if there's any tag broken down, how do you detect that?
Well, we have some rules in the platform. So if we don't detect a tag for a certain amount of time, it raises an alert, and that's why we know that there's something wrong. Try to find the last location, try to investigate, and see what happened. But of course, when the tag is not giving any position, it's always an investigation. It's always a challenge to find it.
All right, I think we're out of time.
So yeah, we have to close. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.